We're back for another episode of the Thought Leaders Lecture Series, a monthly series hosted by Space Center Houston and sponsored by UTMB Health. I'm Becky Trout-Umbehagen, Community Engagement Director for UTMB. Tonight, we return to a familiar topic, spacesuits. In previous lectures, we've learned about the intricacies of suit design, the important role spacesuits play in protecting astronauts, and learned about the historical spacesuit collection housed at Space Center Houston. But tonight we have something new and very special, the reveal of NASA's new spacesuit designed by Axiom Space. Axiom's new suits employ innovative tools and technologies to provide greater protection and mobility for astronauts. They are especially equipped to handle the harsh environment of the moon. Making tonight's reveal even more special, especially for UTMB viewers, is that biomedical researcher turned astronaut and former UTMB employee Peggy Whitson is our host for the reveal. From 1991 to 1997, Dr. Whitson was an invited adjunct assistant professor in the departments of internal medicine and human biological chemistry and genetics at UTMB. She went on to accumulate 665 days in space, more than any woman. I'm so happy you joined us tonight. I feel like we have a front row seat to the astronauts edition of Paris Fashion Week, with the world's top designer as our guide. I hope you enjoyed this special presentation.
Good afternoon and welcome to Space Center Houston. Today we have a very special program, the official unveiling of Peggy Whitson's flight suit at Space Center Houston. Peggy wore this flight suit while accompanying one of the many firsts in the commercial space industry. In this suit, she became the first female commander of the commercial astronaut mission to the International Space Station. Before we welcome Peggy and begin today's program, for your safety, be sure to note the exits. They're on either side of the stage in front of you. Please also silence your cell phones, and as a courtesy to your fellow guests, and note today's program is being recorded. You can use your mobile device to scan the QR code behind me on the screen to submit your questions for Peggy, which we'll ask toward the end of today's program. Now, I'd like to tell you a little bit more about Peggy Whitson. She's America's most experienced astronaut, flew on 3 NASA long-duration space flights and Axiom Mission 2, accumulating 675 days in space, more than any other American astronaut or woman astronaut in the world. Peggy has over 37 years of space and science experience with NASA and Axiom Space, currently serving as Director of Human Spaceflight for the latter. Throughout her career, she's held various positions, including NASA's Chief of the Astronaut Office, 2-time commander of the International Space Station, chair of NASA's Astronaut Selection Board, NASA Operations Branch Chief, and NASA Deputy Division Chief for both medical sciences and the Astronaut Office. Quite the qualifications, aren't they? On AX-2, she became the first female commander of a private space mission, adding to her accomplishments as the first female commander of the ISS, the only woman to serve as ISS commander twice, and then was the first woman non-military chief of NASA's astronaut office. During her 3 previous space missions for the International Space Station, which were Expedition 5, 16, 50/51/52, she conducted 10 spacewalks, logging over 60 hours. Throughout her career, she has contributed to hundreds of experiments in biology, biotechnology, physical science, and earth science. Whitson received degrees in biology and chemistry from Iowa Wesleyan and a doctoral degree in biochemistry from Rice University. She's been honored with numerous awards, including NASA medals in leadership, outstanding leadership, and exceptional service, Time 100 Most Influential People in the World in 2018, and Women in Aviation Lifetime Achievement in 2017. And beside that, she is a big supporter of STEM learning and of Space Center Houston. Please join me in a big round of applause for Peggy Whitson. You're welcome. Welcome again.
Thank you very much, William. It's really great to have an opportunity to come here and show off my flight suit. I wanted folks to be able to see this flight suit because it's an indicator of what the future is bringing, and that is commercial space. And it's really exciting for me to be a part of commercial space, but I thought you guys might be interested in seeing some of the story of how I got here and what was involved in all of that. All right, so the first slide here is showing just the aurora, and I just wanted to talk about my journey to space, which actually started on a farm in Iowa. And the closest town had 32 people in it, no zeros. It's just 32 people. And so I grew up with a lot more hogs and cattle than I did with people. But it just, I think, demonstrates that it doesn't really matter where you come from, that you can attain really big goals if you set your mind to it. Of course, when I turned 9, I saw something incredible. I saw the first guys walk on the moon. Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin stepped out of that lander, and at 9 years old, I knew this was pretty spectacular even. And today, I think it's even more spectacular, but it was really one of those things that inspired me, made me dream of being an astronaut. Of course, at the time, all they were just military pilots, and they were all men. But my dream stayed alive because the next year, my dad got his private pilot's license, and I got my first flight in a Cessna 150 and got to see the Earth from above. I was so impressed, I wanted to learn to fly too, because I knew the astronauts flew, and I'm like, I want to learn to fly too, this is amazing. But we didn't have a lot of money growing up on a farm, and so I had to raise chickens and sell them in order to make enough money to get my pilot's license. And at $3 a chicken, that's a lot of chickens. Okay, and I've been permanently scarred by chickens. So anyway, but I finally succeeded. I managed to get my pilot's license. And so I think it's really important that your dreams aren't always handed to you. You have to work for them, even if it's chickens. But my dream changed the year I graduated from high school. That was the year NASA picked the first female astronauts. And it was really inspiring to me because they weren't military pilots. They were medical doctors and engineers, and one of them was a biochemist, Shannon Lucid. And she, because I was interested in biology and chemistry, I thought, wow, maybe I really can become an astronaut. So I think that was when my dream of becoming an astronaut became a goal. And as soon as I finished college, and I went to graduate school, I did college in 3 years, I was in a hurry, and got a double major in biology and chemistry, because I wanted to be an astronaut. And then I got a PhD in biochemistry, and that was where I thought I was going to be. That's obviously what I needed to be. Well, NASA didn't really think quite that quick. I was working for NASA, but over the course of that time, from the time I got my PhD, I went through 5 different selection cycles and 10 years before I was actually ever interviewed to become an astronaut. Luckily, I did get selected, and a lot of it actually had to do with that 10 years of not being an astronaut. And I like to remind people that your path to your goal isn't always a straight line, but it's really amazing the things that you can learn on the way. And they're really important lessons. And for me, I learned a lot about teamwork, international relations, and failing a little bit to be able to succeed and become even better and a much better leader. And all of that opportunities during those 10 years of rejections were the ones that, those were the skills, the life lessons that enabled me to then become selected as the first female commander on the ISS and the first non-military and chief of the astronaut office. But life really does begin when you push yourself beyond your comfort zone. And I thought I had done that over those 10 years, doing something I never dreamed of doing, negotiating with Russians and developing a science program in Russia. That was nothing compared to all the things that I had to learn as an astronaut. And, it was really challenging for me. I got to fly in a high-performance aircraft, had to learn how to do emergency parachuting just in case. learn robotics, learn how to do spacewalks, medical emergencies, survival training, smokes and fires everywhere. And I also got to learn to be a flight engineer on a Soyuz mission, my second flight, Expedition 16, so that meant I was like the co-pilot, and it was all in Russian. And that was by far the hardest thing I had to do in all my astronaut training. The first 10 years of learning Russian is the hardest. But during my career, I've had the opportunity to launch and land on a space shuttle, 2 launches on a Russian Soyuz vehicle, and then this most recent mission with Axiom was on the Falcon 9 in a Dragon capsule, which was really amazing. So it's been a lot of fun to compare and contrast over the years for this experience. I have just a brief little clip here of a Soyuz launch. The audio's not nearly loud enough. It's a lot louder than this. But it's all rocket launches really are amazing to me. Each of them has different pluses and minuses to the vehicles, but it's all quite spectacular. Here we are rendezvousing with the International Space Station in the Soyuz. Beautiful shot of the space station, which is just a huge structure. And then being welcomed aboard on the space station by the crew that was up there, Shane Kimbrough and his crew. And so our destination, the International Space Station, it's a pretty amazing structure. And it was built in piece parts. Many shuttle launches required to build it, and some Russian Soyuz launches as well to assemble the space station. But you think about it. We built this, the truss alone is the length of a football field. And the solar arrays, each one of those, when it unfurls, is 115 feet long. There are 16 modules now that are basically like large school buses that were all attached at 17,500 miles an hour in the vacuum of space. Pretty cool. I think that it actually works. And we live there. So folks always ask me, what's the best part about being in space? And I'm like, being in space. It is just an amazing sensation. You grow up, every day of your life has gravity in it. You can sit in a chair, your arms fall to your lap, and they're falling. You don't put them there. You don't realize that because when you're in space, they float. Everything is so different in space, and adapting to that environment is actually quite spectacular. And, having that experience so different than the one we have here on Earth is very special. And of course, another incredibly memorable thing are the spacewalks. Having done 1 spacewalk in a Russian Orlan suit and 9 in the US suits has given me the opportunity to be outside and see our beautiful planet from an amazing perspective, basically a spaceship built for one. Here you can see me, the gray bean-shaped thing is the tether that holds me in place, and then holds me attached to the structure, and then you can see all the tools that we work with. The last shot here, if you look out toward the end of the truss, there's a big white box, and you'll see me with my feet moving there. And I think you might be able to catch it in the next one. But you can see all the tools that you have to carry with you, all the tethers required, because we don't want to lose anything. It has happened, and we aren't necessarily proud of it, but with all that construction that we're doing out there, it happens. And it's just an amazing experience to be a part of a spacewalk. So I was selected to be the first female commander of the International Space Station, and we decided on a slightly non-traditional crew poster. But I wanted to, point out the fact that, if you're afraid of failure, you're never really going to succeed. You're never really going to know your potential. You really have to push yourself, again, beyond that comfort zone or the things you know you can do easily. It's really important. And so why do we go into space? And I picked this picture. The blue ball there is actually a ball of water with blue food coloring in it. And so surface tension is like one of the big characteristics in space when you don't have gravity holding that ball as a sphere in front of you. And so that's just an example of all the things that you can do that are different. In fact, the picture on the left shows me working. I'm bracing myself on a sidewall and working with my head down toward on this other object. It was a bone densitometer machine. And then I was doing research in a portable glove box on the ceiling on the right-hand picture. So working in space is very different. You have to adapt to the fact that, you know, every angle feels the same, and then all the tools float away if you don't have them tethered or Velcroed or attached in some form or another. But it allows us an opportunity to look at things that we can't necessarily see easily on the ground. One of the big things is looking at bone density, because without gravity pulling down on you, your bone density is lost at a very high rate. Here on the ground, an osteoporotic woman might lose 1% of her bone mass in a year. In space, if we didn't exercise the hour and a half, 2 hours a day, we would lose 1% in a month. So it's pretty substantial, the change in bone. And it's great. We can use it as a model to look at different drugs for bone repair and testing, because we can test them relatively quickly because it's happening so fast. So it's a great model system for doing that kind of research. One of my favorites actually are the life sciences. As I mentioned, we do combustion and physical science and other things as well. Life sciences are a lot of fun. In the right-hand picture, I was looking at antibody conjugated drugs that were attacking cancer cells. Basically, it was a new way to try and get the drug to the right place on the cancer to kill it. And it was working in space, and we were able to test it. Cancer cells tend to grow faster in space, which allows us to test drugs and try and stop that growth. But they also grow more like they do in the human body, because they're basically floating in your body, and this provides a means to test things like that. But we wanted to talk about this spacesuit over here. We wore these flight suits during the Axiom Mission. And it was my first command of a launch and landing vehicle on the Dragon on the Falcon 9. So that was very exciting for me as a commander. On board my crew, I had a private entrepreneur, John Schaffner, who also does a lot of things like parachuting and cycling and flying airplanes. And he was the pilot in the Dragon capsule. And then we had two government astronauts representing Saudi Arabia, Ali Al-Karni and Rayana Barnawi. And Ali, a fighter pilot, had his background and experience to bring, and Rayana was a biochemist also, a molecular biologist, who did cancer research on the ground and in space. So that was very exciting for all of us. And she was the first female to fly from Saudi Arabia. It was a lot of fun. We trained for 7 to 8 months, and John and I trained as a backup for the AX-1 mission as well. So it was quite a bit longer even for us. We trained over 2 years for the mission. So we were very prepared to fly, and it was exciting going through that whole process. And after all our training together, we arrived at the Kennedy Space Center. And then I'm going to show you a video clip of our experience from AX-2, some of the things that were happening on the mission, and we'll get that started.
And here they are, our AX-2 crew.
3 space rookies and their commander, Peggy Whitson.
Commander Peggy Whitson.
Comandada por Peggy Whitson.
Commander Peggy Whitson.
Dragon, go for launch.
I'm really excited about returning to space, but even more excited about welcoming 3 new astronauts to space. Plus, Gigi's here with us in her little Axiom spacesuit.
Welcome to the International Space Station.
It was a lovely ride. Thanks to everyone for getting us this far.
And that's the flight suit that you see here. I love the experience of being in space.
Thanks,
Take care.
You too.
Really, there's just not much that beats the Drinking ability orange to juice with move chopsticks.
around
however you want. It's zero gravity.
It's been an honor to share the ISS with the Axiom 2 crew.
We really appreciate all of that. We felt at home while we were here. Thank you, and I will be back.
That was a phenomenal ride. We really enjoyed all of it.
Oh, thanks. I think we got one more. And another reason to go to space, you can eat floating Jell-O. I made this as a Christmas present for my surprise Christmas present for my crew while we were up there over Christmas one time. And the views that you see are really incredible. When you're on the space station, we have this incredible cupola that allows you to look out and see our planet and see how beautiful it is. And it gives me just a huge appreciation. You can see part of the space station structure there, you know, each of those laboratory modules and storage modules that are there, you can see. While you're trying to construct an environment that allows you to, you know, to provide the correct pressure for you to live in, the correct atmosphere, so the right amount of oxygen, taking out the carbon dioxide, providing you water to drink, to eat your food, all of that is provided artificially. And you get a huge appreciation for what planet Earth does for us. You know, our temperature is relatively controlled on our planet. The atmosphere is relatively controlled on our planet. We're protected from radiation by the geomagnetosphere that encircles our planet. All these things are provided by planet Earth. So I kind of like when you see our planet from above, it gives me the impression that this is spaceship Earth, and we ought to take care of it. If you look at that bright royal blue thin line that goes around the Earth, that's the atmosphere that you're seeing there. It's very thin. And then when it's dark, you're in the eclipse side of the Earth, you get to see an incredible number of stars. And it's just overwhelming, countless, countless stars. And this is just our galaxy. There are billions and billions of galaxies out there. So it's a really great testimony to perspective when you think about how special this place is and where we are. So each of us, I think, has the power to influence the future, and I want to challenge each of you with, what is your path? How will you choose to influence the future? I think we're going to do questions now. So, yeah.
Thank you so much, Peggy. That was amazing. And I can understand the emotion you're feeling because this is something that's been your life ambition. And I really want to start with the first off, I'm ready to jump into questions because I have so many myself. But we actually have, please scan the QR code if you would like to text a question. And I'll get to as many as I can during the time we have. But I wanted to start by asking, clearly you retired from NASA, but then you had this opportunity with Axiom. Did you pause at all when you had that opportunity to go back to space?
Not a heartbeat. I was not. When I left NASA, I didn't know that flying again would ever be an option. And 5 years later, I was flying in space. I think that's pretty amazing, the testament of how quickly commercial space has changed in those 5 years. And it's a lot of fun being a part of it.
Well, and I know you're going to be going back again, right?
Well, we don't know yet.
So
got my fingers crossed.
So I was curious, because you had many years of training when you become an astronaut, right? You're an astronaut candidate for 2 years, and you become a full-fledged astronaut. And now you went through a different kind of training with Axiom. How does the NASA training differ from the Axiom Mission training?
Well, that's a great question because we were training for a very short duration mission versus a long duration mission. And I actually liken what we're doing with Axiom on our short duration missions is much more like what we trained for shuttle missions. When it was a 14-day shuttle mission, you had to focus in a different way and prioritize the different tasks. When we train for a 6-month mission or longer, you don't know what's going to happen, what you're really going to be working on. Things change, things break. You have to be generically trained to do everything. And so for the Axiom mission, it only takes 7 to 8 months to train for it because we're focused, much like a shuttle mission, on just those objectives we want to accomplish in that 12 to 14 days. So it's a different training style. We still get training from NASA on the specifics of the hardware and emergency procedures. We get training from SpaceX, but Axiom has also got a lot of say about how we want to do it in order to make our missions very successful.
So between your last time on station and the time with Axiom, how has the space station changed? Are there changes that you noticed in terms of updates?
The biggest change was an additional Russian module was on board. Mostly, you know, it's funny to see some bags that still have your handwriting on them. I mean, it's kind of neat to see that on board the station. So there's lots of it that is still the same, very much the same. You still go to the same place to find your battery pantry. You know, all these things that are the same. And then new experiments and hardware, new facilities are there. And that's exciting to me as a scientist. I like to see all the new stuff.
Well, I think that's what's so amazing about the International Space Station. It is the national lab, or the International Lab, and the largest in microgravity, and all the incredible experiments that have taken place. Yeah. So I think it was fascinating that you actually had an opportunity to continue doing experiments with this crew. And I'm wondering about, especially for the two Saudis who had an opportunity to go to space, what was their experience like when you spoke with them? Is it something, because it was unlikely in their lifetime they thought they would ever get to space.
No, I mean, it was not really something I think they had done more than maybe that dream part. They didn't have a way, they didn't have access to space. And so this was, you know, making that into something real for them, that something they might not have even dreamed of as kids, not seeing that as a reality. So they had had one former Saudi guy fly on a space shuttle, but it was like 45 years ago.
Yes,
so a whole generation of people don't know anything about it and, you know, didn't have the same opportunity to be inspired by that.
Mm. So. Well, someone did ask about, we do have a Falcon 9 rocket, a fun one here at Space Center Houston. They asked if it was the one you went up on, and it is not. But it is the same kind of technology. It's the same first stage rocket that is reusable.
Yeah.
But I did want to ask about the suit. Did you have any input into the design of the suit, or how it's different from the ones that were used in past years?
No, not really. You know, Axiom worked with commercial partners to come up with the suit design, and so that was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it. It's a very comfortable suit.
Well, I know we hear this from astronauts, and maybe this was the case for you as well, because they really haven't changed the spacewalking suit, the EMU, very much over the years.
Axiom's trying to fix that.
Yes. I think we had a little preview of that last year here, yeah. which was very exciting. So I'm curious, when you were, it was very emotional to see you leaving station, and I know that it was probably a big dream that you got to go back again. What were some of your thoughts when you were departing and saying goodbye to the crew?
You know, just it's always such a special experience to be there with a group and bond with a group. Space brings people together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So I'm wondering, you know, you're so generous with your time, and you always go out and share your experiences with everyone. What would you say to the people who are aspiring to go to space in the audience?
Well, I tried to give you a few of those lessons. One is, live outside your comfort zone. Don't just accept the jobs and the roles that you know you can succeed at. Try the ones you're not sure you can, because that's when you're going to find out what you're really, truly capable of. And you can use the lessons you learn from that to make you even better on the next one. Mm. And so I really do think it's important. I dreamed of going to space. I made it a goal to go into space, but becoming a commander, becoming the first chief of the astronaut office, those were things because I challenged myself to do more than I thought I could.
Mm. So I'm curious, and we have a question about this. If you had an opportunity to go to the moon, would you do that?
In a heartbeat. Sign me up.
Well, it is really fascinating because this opportunity for humans now to go to a space station is now becoming more available and accessible to many of us, and having a shorter duration experiences as well. Do you foresee us really becoming an interplanetary species?
I hope so. I certainly do. I think it's important for the long-term perpetuation of our species, yes.
Fantastic. Well, I'm curious too. I mean, it was fascinating hearing, and there were a couple of questions here about this, your early life when you were on a farm, which is a great story, and it's a great story of perseverance where you set goals and you're going to find a creative way to move forward. So what does your family say now about you having achieved that vision that you had as a young person?
They're all very proud of me. They still razz me. That's what families do.
You will always be Peggy who raised and sold chickens, right? To your family. Yeah, I understand that. I come from a rural area as well, so I can empathize with that experience. So we're so excited to have the spacesuit here on exhibit at Space Center Houston. And it's so inspiring for our guests to see something that someone actually used, because it provides kind of that vicarious experience. You know, one thing that we're big advocates of here is to include everyone to go into space, particularly young women. And so I wonder, what are some of the messages you would have for young women who are thinking about a career in STEM or science, or possibly working in the space industry in some way?
Well, I think it's important to find something you love. You know, work should be something that you really enjoy. So find your passion, whatever that might be. In the future, space industry is going to open up even more opportunities in different ways. You never know exactly what the right path is going to be. I talked to a young gal who was heat sealing the inner seals of the space suit that we do the spacewalks in. So it's got to hold up against the pressure of being in the vacuum of space for long periods of time. She was doing the heat sealing. And I asked her what her degree was in, and she said fashion design. So you never know where your path might lead, and the opportunities that we see in the future are going to be immense because the technologies that we need to develop are going to be really important. So find your passion, go after it, you know, be the best, and you know, I think it's important for all of us to be a little bit diverse, not just have a single thing. I'm pretty directed, because that's always what I wanted to do. But I feel lucky that I've had experiences in international venues that permitted me to be a better astronaut in the end.
Well, I think it's also fascinating that there is now a commercial space industry.
Yeah.
And I know that's been an aspiration for many decades, and many people think, oh, this just happened. I'm wondering if you could just comment about how this has been invested in over the years and kind of NASA's role.
So, I was chief of the astronaut office when NASA decided we were going to do commercial cargo and then commercial crew. And it was a big deal trying to define what that was going to look like. But that was in 2013, you know, 2011 was the last shuttle flight, and we were hoping to have, you know, commercial cargo going relatively soon, and then commercial crew. It took longer. I mean, space flight's not easy, but it's happening, and it's happening at a much faster pace now with all the different companies that are involved out there. I think, and the diversity of different projects and tasks that they're working on. It's really important for the development of our science and technology here on Earth, and because all those benefits come back here to Earth.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think absolutely. I mean, it was wonderful when you were describing some of the experiments you took place, particularly research on cancer, and how many people do ask, why are we going to space and why are we conducting these experiments in a microgravity environment? And because the properties are different. So I'm wondering if you could speak a little bit more about why that environment is so ideal for experimentation, particularly medical.
Well, in any type of experimentation, you have different variables that you're looking at. Sometimes it might be temperature, heat. Gravity is the variable there that we're looking at that offers a difference. And that lack of gravity provides differences in how physical properties work. Fluids don't work the exact same way, so we do a lot of fluids research trying to understand how to make propellants flow in zero gravity. But in the process of doing that and doing combustion experiments where we're looking at combustion of fuels, we're learning more about what makes more efficient fuel combustion here on the ground too. So everything that we learn up there tends to get applied on the ground, whether it's something that's a direct product. One of the exciting things about working for Axiom is I'm looking forward to us actually manufacturing products that we bring back to Earth, like perfect cataract lenses or something like that, that we can make in space. With the lack of gravity, you can make perfect lenses, and you could bring them home and people could have space eyeballs.
Wow. Well, sign me up. I know that's in my future, so. Well, that is absolutely amazing. I know we have many more questions people would like to ask, but we actually have a wonderful opportunity that you're going to make available. And I wanted to actually call up Chance Sanford, who's one of our colleagues, who's going to describe that. And this is quite exciting, Peggy, so thank you. So Chance, please come to the podium and make a special announcement for us. And before he does that, please join me again in a round of applause for Peggy Whitson and thanking her for joining us today.